So we have this very illustrious panel here on my right. So my task is actually made quite easy. I have just a few opening remarks before I hand over these 5 people individually to tell you about their very diverse publishing lives. Thoughts about the world I inhabit as a publisher, as a bookseller. There is a hint here of something close to servicing. I suspect that somewhere along the way we may have actually begun to believe that this business of choosing to be amongst books is a calling. Like the medical profession used to be, like some of the teaching profession still is, a phrase we do not often hear any longer comes to mind. This, what we do, is our life's work. There is immense satisfaction when you locate a book that is hard to find by sheer detective work and see the joy on your customer's face. There is also stress when you have to balance books of a different kind, a different nature every month, because this is a very slow-selling trade. There is definitely a feeling of fraternity, which is why we're all here. And if I may add, community. And beneath all this is the feeling that our area of influence is under constant threat. But this is nothing new. The alternative is in perpetual state of extinction. I would say that it is precisely this threat that keeps it alive and continually energized. I would like it if down the line, each one of us, starting with Jan and then Gabriella, tell us a little about what they do as publishers and the kind of books they make possible. Jan?
Yes, thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for having me at Jaipur Literature Festival. It's such a vibrant and wonderful festival so far, so I'm very pleased and happy to be here. And yes, I'm the publisher of culture books, Kulturbooks, and we started out in 2013, so we are a relatively new enterprise, and we started out as a digital publisher. We knew 1 or 2 things about literature, but we didn't have any money. So it was all planned to build a brand and build a catalog, and we started by doing that with digital, with e-books, that books we loved and liked that were out of print and that we wanted to be available. So we did e-book editions, and we laid out our philosophy, which is that we want to publish works from all around the world. But we always had in mind that we just grow step by step and that we start to print books. So it's interesting because normally it was the other way around before, decades ago. And the first book actually was a book from an Indonesian author. It was because Indonesia was the guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair. Rati Kumala, The Cigarette Girl, was the first printed edition we did. So our first book was a girl, a cigarette girl. And we loved the book very much. We loved Rati Kumala very much. And then we started to reach out to other parts of the world. And now we are publishing authors from Europe, of course, but also from the US of A, from South America, Africa, New Zealand, of course Asia, Southeast Asia, and from India actually also. So we are a very small, owner-led enterprise, which means that we really focus on the few titles we do each season and try to make the very best of it. And over the years we managed to do that. We managed to build an audience. We have some of our books have award-winning books and award-winning authors, so that helps. But we managed to build a connection with the literary critics in Germany, with the bookstores and so on. So what we tried to do is we wanted to open up the perspective. We wanted to add new perspectives to the table. And because we are small, we we have the luxury of not looking at the latest trends and the so-called hot books. So we can choose what we want to choose and bring a lot of female voices, a lot of very distinctive literary voices to the table. And I feel that connecting with another culture, when you do so, when you read perspectives from another culture, it changes your view of the world. And this is something, to my mind, that's very, very important. And that's why we do what we do at Culture Books.
Thank you, Jan. Gabriele.
That was beautiful. Is this on? Okay. I really like what you said about making the world bigger, and I love the conceit of vocation. I discovered that translation existed when I was a teenager. I was learning Spanish in high school and discovered Laura Restrepo and read her Isle of Passion in translation in English, and then quickly discovered she had other books that were written in Spanish that didn't exist in English. And so then I set myself an ambition that has since come to pass, and I've now done 2 books with her at Amazon Crossing, and we're working on her new novel for Harper Via. So I knew as a youngster that translation mattered to me, and part of the reason for that was the bigness of the world. I think we oftentimes are very excited to live in the smallest world possible, and to accept what is visible to us and not ever seek anything else. And in the book publishing world in the U.S., the beginning of my career was a time of great fear and scarcity. There was the e-books were coming, people were terrified, they thought that books were over, and that by the time I would grow up to be a real editor, there was not going to be any books left. And instead, what I've seen is that, of course, books keep coming back and books are eternal. So I had the opportunity to work at Amazon Crossing and build a list focused on literature and translation over 14 years there. And the goal in that imprint was not only to prove that commercial fiction and mainstream books should be part of the offering in translation, but also to think as broadly as possible about what we mean when we think about what people want to read. So Amazon sold a lot of books through digital formats and also direct to consumers, reaching many readers who are outside of the coasts. And in the US, we have this conceit of extremely sort of cultured big cities that are on both coasts, where it's easy to find books and where it's easy to discover new voices. But if you live in the suburbs and you live in the Midwest and you live in the South, you would never know what was coming because it's only the sort of blockbusters that make it your way. And we had great success at Amazon Crossing. I like to talk about how profitable we were from the beginning until the end. And now I have been for 2 years with HarperCollins, focusing on bringing translations across fiction and nonfiction. So for Harper Via, I'm publishing a list of big novels is the goal, many in translation. The one on my lap is not, but this is an Irish writer who's up and coming named Alan Murren. And this novel is getting lots of buzz, even though it doesn't come out until June, and Bloomsbury is doing it in the UK and Commonwealth. And the idea that even an Irish author is wildly disadvantaged coming into the US market is exciting to me. I love the idea that we have to knock down 1,000 obstacles in order to reach our reader, and a lot of the battles that I've started out working to fight through at Amazon Crossing, I've just sort of taken square one again in this new role, because in the traditional publishing realm, you have to convince very many people in order for a book to reach a reader. It's not just direct to the reader that we're speaking. And I love the idea that with my Harper One role, I'm working with Pope Francis. That's a book in translation. Aubrey Botsford is translating his biography. And that's a HarperCollins massive initiative in 17 languages simultaneously, and it's super exciting to bring my translation specialization to bear on that. I work with Paulo Coelho, I work with Thich Nhat Hanh, I work with a number of authors who are works in translation, but blockbusters as well, and also the backlist emphasis at Harper One was a big part of what drew me there, because it's not, to me, this obsession with what's brand new and what's being made to television shows and movies and what's popping on Instagram. Those things are good. They can make business flow in the current time, but business needs to be flowing over the eternal time. And a lot of what we are doing at Harper One is building on a very wonderful and solid foundation. So I feel privileged to be in that setting. And I really think that the specialization that I've chosen in my career came from somewhere very personal, but it has been battered and it has been discouraged in many directions. And it's such a privilege to step out of that US publishing environment and to see myself among my peers in France and Germany and India and understand that there are these much bigger ideas about what publishing is. And that gives, again, what Jan said, I'm not just competing for the one piece of meat that everyone's going to pay as much as they can mortgage their house to pay for it and fight to the tooth for the one cool book. I have my eyes all over the world, and I have the opportunity to publish things that other people don't even know are available.
Thank you so much. Vera, on the other hand, wears many hats, and we're really looking forward to hearing about this.
So, I always say we are a small independent publishing group. And now I can't say anymore that we are a small and young publishing group, because we celebrated last year the 190th anniversary of the Polish bookstore in Paris, founded in 1833. So, I know a little bit about book selling too. And this has been in existence ever since 1833. And nowadays sells books, but as well some, artifacts and things, and representing an independent Poland. But in fact, when we started, as was said in the introduction, the idea was to publish mostly Russian and Polish authors into French. And then very soon we started publishing authors from all over the world, like big names that had practically not been published in Poland. And we did this after 1990. And then after a while, I found it boring to be to restrict ourselves to just this area, which needed to be, of course, put into the limelight, because it was still the Iron Curtain, and circulation of ideas were not so, and books were not so good. And so we acquired Buchet-Chastel, which is a publishing house that had been in existence since 1929, and which had a very good and very interesting foreign list that we then expanded. We have quite a few Indian authors, now Scandinavian authors, American authors, and lately we do have our interest as well in thrillers, international literary thrillers. And while we were going on in Noir sur Blanc, publishing Eastern European authors, but expanding it as well, because I think what is very important as well is to have books that make you laugh and smile, I mean, the world as it is, it's sad enough, so it's good to have some books that make you smile. So we were able, practically in the same moment, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Gulag Archipelago publication, and at the same time to publish a cooking book called The Goulash Archipelago, which some people actually, I got some very unpleasant email. How dare you joke about anything like that? But I think, you don't actually despise anything as long as it's quality and humor involved, and literary quality. So now we do publish in Polish quite an international list as well. It's one of the best literary Polish houses that was established under communist regime in 1953. And when communism fell, they were looking for private investors, and then we were able to acquire it. And actually, we share a book with my neighbor here, and the list of wydawnictwo literackie is quite impressive in Polish literature, because we are the lucky publishers of Olga Tokarczuk and many other Nobel Prizes, but as well very interesting young Polish writers and the likes of Elena Katon and Georgi Gospodinov, who is here, whom we are lucky to publish in Polish, and many other interesting writers. I could ramble on.
Yeah. Would you please talk to us about your work, your very special Varanasi-based Indica?
Yes. Thank you, Navinji. Actually, my work in publishing is somehow inseparable from my personal life. I was born in Spain, then I came to India in 1981, and came several times. I was very impressed by the country. And in 1989, I came 2 years to Varanasi, and then I couldn't go back. So I started a publishing house, a company, book company, first with an Indian partner, Dilip Jaiswal. And it was, we opened in 1994. That means we have 30 years before now. And my partner had worked with Motilal, so he was in the Indology line. And I was a librarian before. So I took up the publication work, which, but I am a totally self-taught publisher. I knew how books were, but I had never worked with this. Now, this had disadvantages and advantages. It had the disadvantages that you had to learn everything from scratch. But it has the advantages that you don't have to follow the rules. You are more free to experiment, no? Even if you do some mistakes. Then I married there. My wife is there. We have a family. And then my partner was in the Indology line, then we started to publish in Indology, which means Indian classical philosophy and Indian classical culture, which also suited me very well because I was very interested in the Indian culture. At the same time, we started to publish also in collaboration with the Spanish publishers books about India. The books we publish in India for the Indian market are what I call hard Indology, you know, tough, really tough books. And the ones in Spain were light Indology.
If you could explain exactly what you mean by that.
Hard Indology means a book you would not read. Oscar Pujol there could read it. I mean, it's books for people who have already studying this, who are in the field. No, it's not for everyone. And light Indology is for Spanish people who don't know much about India. Then that is it. Then I also wrote some books. I wrote this one book, India from Within, in Spanish, which in Spain worked very well because there is no competition actually, so there is no special merit. But it has grown into many editions. Whereas the same book published in India hardly sells, because it's a little bit of everything about India. And that is it. And then I wanted to retire, but then my partner died, and we had to take over the company again. Now my younger son and me are the partners, and I had to retake again the publication work, although my working capacity is much weaker than before. I'm 70 now.
Well, good, you're not retiring, you're younger than me. Okay. Louise, would you like to tell us about?
Yes, I work for the publishing house Mattes and Seitz Berlin. It's an independent publishing house, and we publish about 100, 120 titles per year, and they are 50% are translations. So you see, it's also a big part of our publishing house. And our publishing is always motivated by the trying to understand the world and ourselves, and we hope that we could also inspire people and the readers to think and reflect by their own. So I think that is one of the strongest motivations. And we publish contemporary authors from Germany, like Frank Witze or Anne Weber, who won the German Book Prize in 2020. And we are also known for like the translation of classic and contemporary French authors, to mention Georges Bataille and Emmanuel Carrère, Eric Viard. And we also have a focus on Russian literature. And our publisher, Andreas Rötzer, went several years ago to Taiwan, and then he explored like the Asian world, so to say. And then he also was curious about the languages, the authors, the culture there, and that was the reason why he decided to also publish authors from China, from Japan. We have an author from Taiwan, and also some authors from India, for example, Sumana Roy, and we have a translation from Amitav Ghosh. And we see the international authors as an enrichment, giving us access to more than one culture, more than one literature, more than one language, and other stories to explore. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is a diverse range of activity, and yet I seem to think that what seems to bind everybody is a kind of passion for doing the books. And also, there is a kind of undercurrent of a certain kind of translated literature from different languages, certainly for book culture, and Mattes and Seitz in particular, and of course, your interest in that too. I just wanted to pick up on something Gabriella said and see if your experience will weigh in, and you can answer, whoever wishes to answer, is a concern that has surfaced recently in the publishing world that I inhabit, which is also kind of crisscrosses Europe often, and which is the, I grew up in publishing depending on a very strong backlist, that across the backlist things are meant to slowly, versus a more American model of front list titles which sell 50,000, 100,000 and then die out. But I'm now told, is this true, that the backlist is now under threat for different kinds of reason? Jan, do you kind of get that sense?
I think what's changing is that the audience wanted to be introduced to new voices, to new perspectives on the world. I listened to Hernan Diaz yesterday, and he said one beautiful thing. He said, what constitutes ourselves and our identity is the stories we tell about ourselves. And I was wondering if the same is true about societies and nations, that the stories within the nations and within the societies that we tell each other and that we tell about ourselves are the things that constitutes us as nations and societies. And as our societies are changing, as more and more people living in the societies that have more than one cultural background, there's like the space between cultures. And in this space, in my opinion, there are so many good news stories to be found, and I think these stories have to be introduced into the societies to help them grow and to connect them, especially in a world that's as polarized as it is right now, in this changing world, where we got multipolar world and the big changes that are going on. It's of utmost important that we tell ourselves our stories so that we don't only see the other as the other, but that we notice the universality within ourselves, the equality in looking at the world as a human being. So I think books now that talk about this kind of change, I think that they are very, very much sought after. And maybe right now they a little bit overshadow the other stories that have been told for a long time. So maybe this is my explanation, maybe. So we see it when we do like authors like Bora Chang, for example, who really is has a global mindset, but uses South Korean legends and so on, but also the European legends, and mixes them together. And there's an audience all over the world that is keen on reading these stories.
Thank you. That's a very lovely way of putting it. Gabrielle, you have any thoughts on?
I love that we don't know what's going to backlist well until later. I think that, Paulo Coelho is a great example. I mean, his books don't seem like obvious bestsellers. They're hovering between fiction and self-help. There's this archetypal quality to the way that he's writing his books. And that backlist is enough to support a business to take a lot of risks. And that backlist is strong enough selling that Rick Simonson can keep it on his bookshelves at the Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle, and it doesn't get outplaced by the next big thing. So I think the idea that translations are, there are many translations that endure, and we are actually privileged to choose projects and books that have already endured in another language and that have already proven their place on the long shelf life of history. But we also, as editors, can take risks because of that balance that we have created with the backlist, and we can also use that backlist to narrate against some of the tropes. Why wouldn't you take a chance on literature and translation when you have a backlist that has demonstrated that literature and translation transcends the boundaries of the marketplace? But I think there's also a boom happening right now in global thinking, and young people are linked to the whole world through their phones, and they're sort of confused by the fact that the offerings on TV and in the library and at the bookstore are so narrow when what they're seeing in their world on their phone is so much broader. So I have a lot of faith that Bora Chung is a great example. I mean, some of these writers have a great chance of maintaining interest over the long haul, over many books, over many years. And there's no reason for us to doubt that the audience is there. We just have to, reach out and trust that we can find them.
Mm-hmm. If I may change a little from that, Vera, you can of course add to it, but something she said about the young people, and the, you know, it is a very sort of everything is now Instagrammed. There are visual images. There's a kind of almost like a shortness of breath. You go from one thing to the other. In your experience over all these years, do you see the content changing because of this, not just the shortness of attention span, but also this whole image gratification that's happening constantly all the time? Do you get that sense? I mean,
in a way, certainly, but you know, what's changed dramatically, if you take the case of France, for example, before an author would sell his rights, you know, ad vitam aeternam, as long as the copyright holds, but now most authors have agents and you can only buy the rights for 7 years. So if you don't spend your nose on your contract the whole time, you might lose the rights, and then here goes your backlist, you know. So that you know, puts an excessive effort on administrative issues, so you know, many publishers have lost some of the backlist. But I think the shorter attention span, which we all suffer from, actually, I mean, even if we try to defend ourselves, is of course changes the contents of what we publish and the lifespan of the books. But I think it is the achievement, the best achievement a publisher can have is to bring the book on the market and allow it to stay, and using all these social networks and publicity and marketing and everything to prolong the life of the book until the next one comes. And then if you have new fans for the new book, then they would reach back to the backlist, you know. And I think in a way the system feeds itself, you know, and doesn't lose the good books. And that would be my take on it.
Thank you. Do you have anything you feel in your experience? Do you get the sense, because yours is such a specialist field?
Yes.
And
yes, we are a very specialized.
Which has a very strong spine. It carries on, as we can see.
We are a very specialized publishing house, as you say. We have a small niche. Books. Most of our books take a very long time to sell. We have the advantage that they don't get out of fashion. A classic book translated from Sanskrit would sell 10 years later, the same as now.
100 years later. Yes, that's interesting.
And no, I would like to comment on what you say, that book is a call, is a vocation, not really.
Yes, that's right.
You know, in India they say that Lakshmi and Saraswati, they don't like each other. They are not usually together. Lakshmi, yes. You know, Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, and Saraswati is the goddess of learning. So they don't usually inhabit in the same place. When we opened our first bookshop, now we have shifted to another one. It was in a very good location, a new one also. And a friend of mine, he was a Sindhi, who had several shops of silk saris. Varanasi is a hub for silk saris. And he said, oh, you have a wonderful place there. Oh, a shop of silk saris, it would work marvelously there. But what to do? You like books.
Yes. Louise, would you like to comment on either of these thoughts in terms of either the backlist, the changing content?
Yes, I can add something for the backlist, because the backlist for our publishing house is quite important, and because, yeah, I think it's also important for a publishing house which defines itself through the authors. So the authors refer to each other, so it creates creates a kind of cosmos. And before I travel here, I also ask our publisher which inspires him, or which is a source of inspiration for him to publish new books. And he told me footnotes in the books we already have published are inspiration. And that also like shows how like to create go deeper in the topics and to open the topics with different authors. So some people say, okay, you publish a new book about the same topic, but it's another point of view and other voice. And I think it's also necessary to to show the many voices and to build this kind of cosmos and
Thank you. I have just two more tiny little questions. One, of course, is we should break the pattern. We'll come back to Jan. Vera, it'd be nice to get your experience and knowledge. And, I come from a very old-fashioned way of publishing, and I miss the fact, this was something I was talking to them earlier about, the publishers are no longer appearing to be preoccupied with contributing to the intellectual climate of a community or nation or city or, I don't mean this as a general thing, but I noticed that if you get a bunch of publishers together and say, do you really think about it consciously? So just, it's just a thought.
Yeah,
so.
but I don't know if I agree with you. I think some publishers are still very keen on contributing to intellectual life. And as you know, when we were discussing it while preparing for the session, sometimes you make a book which is less convincing, and then thanks to that, you will make 5 or 6 excellent books, that you really, that you think will contribute to thought and everything, and intellectual life. This, is the essence of publishing, unless you have long sellers like you have, and where you don't have to worry about it. But each book is an adventure, in the world we live in. We always say it's like, I don't even know the English word, artisanal. Each book is a prototype. In fact, you never know how the book is going to sell. And some books have all the ingredients for success, and they will not succeed. And some others seem to you totally, an anecdote or anything, and they will immediately flourish. But I believe, when you talk with publishers, very, very quickly people don't talk about one book or a book. They talk about their lists. I have this splendid addition to my list. And when they so that when you die, you will leave a list. You will not leave your name, but you will leave a list. And this is, I think, very important because it shows that the authors that are part of this adventure are really acknowledged. Who cares about the publisher? I mean, what is interesting is the books and the contents of the books and the authors, of course.
Yes, and I think the publisher loves all of his creatures. No, some do well and some do not well. Yeah. But you have a son that has success and another one that remains poor, but you still love the poor one.
Even more so. Yeah.
Of course, even more so. Yeah.
Gabriella, do you have a thought or two on that?
Lists are big in the US, and we're always sort of fighting about them and the resources it takes to put a book out and how much room we each get on the list. And I was talking to students last week at Ashoka University in Delhi about, I know how to think of my work in dollars. It's like I can immediately see the pivot table that shows how much money the books that I've chosen have earned across the list. And so you're supposed to love all of your children equally. And what I've come to realize is that actually the ones I love the least tend to be the ones that buoy that number up. And the ones that I love the most are the ones that endure over time. I mean, course adoptions and that intellectual life. I was joking with Naveen, does America have an intellectual life? And I think that the fact that it doesn't, and it has really been under attack, and it is continuing to be under attack. But I think that's a great loss for young people, and I think there are a lot of very smart readers who are eager to find books that are as smart as they are. And so sometimes the books that succeed really surprise us. And as you said, it's like all of the ingredients can be there and nothing can happen. And other times there can be no obvious ingredients for success and you can see the best
A publisher
case.
friend of mine says if the publishers knew which work will work, then all the publishers would be rich.
That's right.
Thank you. One last question for Jan. Taking off from there, when and if the young stop reading print books entirely, what is our backup plan? This is for both of you.
There won't be any printed books in 5 years. That's something I heard like 20 years ago. And I strongly believe that we will have even in 5 years, we will have people who say there won't be any books in 5 years, and we will still have books. So in Germany, the percentage of the e-books it's leveling at 5, 6. Yeah, it's leveling. And I think there.
6%.
Yes, yeah. In belletristic, it's much more like crime fiction and so on. But it's and so the book is it's like a magic. It takes you on a miracle ride, and I don't think that purely this digital content can do that. So we will always need what is more important? We need beautiful books, you know. And this is something we and a lot of publishers like Madison Zeitz are focusing on. That it are really nice editions, very good paper, and so on and so on. And I think that's a good tendency. So the things you can read at the the so-called genre books, they are getting more and more into the digital sphere, and the other books become nicer and more beautiful. And then I think that's a good thing. But if I may, can I just add one? You want to comment on it?
Then she'll have the last word.
Yeah, what you said about the changing what people read and the changing content in Germany. Of all the translated books, the huge majority is translated from the English and from other Western countries, US, UK, and so on. And only a very, very tiny number of books come from other parts of the world, from very big parts of the world. But there's still very few books in Germany. So if you deal in that kind of niche, so to speak, you have to have a lot of confidence into the book, and you have a lot of partners that help you with the translation, like, for example, translation funding. That's of utmost important for every kind of publisher, small publishers, but bigger publishers as well. And I really believe that we need to strengthen this funding system all over the world in order to connect with each other.
Thank you. Luis, one last comment from you, and then we'll open it to the House.
Okay. We have the experience that there are like two audience. There are like the young people. They are interested in the topics and in the literature and in the discussion. But in Germany, it's sometimes quite expensive to publish such well-made books, and I think we also have to be careful to not lose the young readers, which maybe don't have so much money to buy the books. So we, in our publishing house, we have also some not so expensive books for the younger readership. And on the other side, when the festival was opened, Sanjoy told us that he always liked to smell the books, it's a special smell, and I think we all also enjoy this. And so we also, it's necessary for us to celebrate the beauty of a book and to have this haptic experience, to touch it, and you can smell it, and you are able to work with a book, make some marks, and I really, that's necessary, and I think that will last also, because everything is like digital, everyone is on his phone, and sometimes we also need the contact to something like you can touch and smell.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And on that hopeful note, if you have questions of any of the panelists.
Hello. Ma question, c'est pour Madame Michalski-Hoffmann. Bonjour, Madame. Je m'appelle Shreya. J'ai écrit en français et j'ai fait mon master à la Sorbonne. Et maintenant, j'ai écrit. Je veux publier mon livre qui est en français. C'est presque fini. Et j'ai vraiment la chance de vous parler ici.
I'm not sure everybody understands French, but we can talk after maybe.
Oui, oui.
Yeah.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci.
Anybody else? Any comments? Anything we've not talked about? Yes, Rick, please.
This has been great and given a lot to think about. But one quick observation was we were talking about backlist. I'm a bookseller from the U.S. and in 2020, 4 years ago, when everything had to shut down for the pandemic, except that we became a online bookstore then. But it was backlist, actually. I mean, new books kind of stopped the machinery of new releases, and it was backlist, both obvious, like Camus' The Plague, but also people taking on Murasaki's Tale of Genji and Boccaccio's Decameron, and the range of older books that became the best-selling books was quite extraordinary. So just reminding that having the backlist there to put in people's hands did really come to the fore then.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us that there was a pandemic. Well, sometimes it seems everything's back to normal, and there's never been anything like it. But there was a pandemic, and many bookstores were closed. I think it was the same here in India. And I know that a lot of German publishers had a very good time. Returns were very good. So I wanted to ask you independent publishers, what was it like for you in the different countries?
Yeah, first we will, of course, it was a complete catastrophe because nobody knows what the world has in stock for us next, and the pubs, the stores, the pubs also closed down, but the bookstores closed down. Yeah, it was a totally disaster on so many levels. But then something magical happened. We really learned that there was a need for the people to read, and they had more time because they didn't commute to work and back, so they had more time on their hands. And they really, in Germany at least, they supported the independent bookstores. They went to the bookstores. There are bookstores who delivered the books to the doorsteps of the people, and actually the sales went up. Not in total, I think, because there were other big shops at the malls and at and so on, airports, they had to close down. But for the independent bookstores in the quarters where the people lived, it was a good time, and for independent publishers as well, as it turned out.
Yeah, I can say that for many authors, not only in Germany, it was hard to find, to getting into contact with the audience, because festivals, like this kind of festival and other readings weren't there. It was closed and everyone doesn't know how it works. But then there was also a big development in getting digital events, and but now there's also in Germany, I know this from the organizers and from the event section, that they want to have the physical contact to the audience, to get in touch, and that's not possible with a screen. So yeah, maybe.
Any other comment? Yeah. Just get you the mic.
No, the question is for all of you, and I am very curious to know, as a reader and a buyer of books, how the Amazon model of business has affected you. Is this kind of selling helping you, or on the contrary? I would really like to know what is your experience, and how, because it has changed the way people buy books, no? So what is your take on this kind of model of selling books?
So if I can say maybe, in our publishing house Noir sur Blanc, which is very specialized on Eastern European literature, so some of our readers would be in a place where there are no bookstores at all. So then they would buy on Amazon, and without Amazon we wouldn't sell those books. So in some specialized parts of publishing, Amazon became the best client actually. So people, on one hand, we of course all defend independent bookstores, and this is where most of our books are sold. But Amazon puts, as you would say in French, some butter into the spinach.
In India, our experience is that in Amazon.in, which is only for India, the there is a much larger amount of public that can buy the book. The bad side is that in some European countries there is a fixed price for books. No, a maximum discount of in Spain is 5% is allowed. There's no such thing in India. So in Amazon, all the booksellers are doing competition to lower the price, which at the end is bad for everybody because you have the margins are very small.
I'm biased because I've made a lot of money and had a lot of success working for Amazon. But I think actually I've been shocked in this shift to HarperCollins that it's completely two different worlds. It's like the Amazon customer is not actually, it's not direct competition the way that we think it is to independent booksellers. It's much more like there's all these people who didn't really think that they were book people and who have become book people because of like digital subscription reading is big with Amazon. And that direct-to-consumer marketing is a huge burden that traditional publishing hasn't really done very much to address. Like there's newsletters, there's social media, there's means to try to reach directly to the public. But that was something that I am, in my career, I'm very curious to see if there is a publishing model that can address both. I think there's a perception that price is the only variable when you're working through Amazon and online retail, and also in digital, that it's only if it's free or if it's very cheap that people will buy. But I don't think that's actually the issue. I think the issue is how people discover books. And there's a marketplace that really loves discovering books through Amazon because the algorithm is speaking their language. And they understand that they can always find more and it'll always be available. And they won't have to wait and they won't have to, there are thousands and thousands of new books published every year in English in the US. So it's very difficult to be seen in the heap. So in some ways, everybody on Amazon has a totally different curation and experience. So there's, I think, audience members who would read books that traditional publishing is publishing and would read them in print and as other formats as well if they knew about us. And that's something that I'm surprised at HarperCollins. There's not much interest in these ideas and these questions because there's a sort of that works for them because of vertical integration. That couldn't work for us. But as there are all these huge multinational corporations, it seems surprising to me that they haven't tried to tackle that since there's this huge reading audience that isn't even noticing many of the mainstream publishers' books.
Yeah, in Germany we have fixed prices, so this is a very big plus. But of course, Amazon is a threat to the independent bookstores and through this to the independent publishers. And during the pandemic, you could very clearly see the difference between a good bookstore and Amazon because Amazon was prioritizing toilet paper over books. And you needed to wait like 2 weeks, 3 weeks for a book because they need to sell their toilet paper. And yeah, I think that was a very good, that speaks for itself.
Well, I think that's it for today, right? The time seems to be up. And thank you very much, everybody. Wonderful panel. And thank you.